Welcome back. After a short break, this is K24 This Morning, still knee-deep in our newspaper review, and of course we have a question of the day that we are posing to you as well. Let's have that up on screen. Can Parliament's leadership bring the House to consensus to support the government agenda? Can Parliament's leadership bring the House to consensus to support the government agenda? That's what we are asking. You can send us your feedback on the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. There you have it. BBI is a bunch of hot air. If the political class disregard the constitution as it is, who is to say that they will respect the BBI proposals if it inconveniences them? That's Nesh from Meru. Okay, let's have that up. Parliament should never be a rubber stamp. The agenda should be debated, and if beneficial to Wanjiko, passed. If not, then they should be rejected. Okay, keep them coming in, of course. The WhatsApp number still at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, you can also get me on Twitter at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. Just talking about what is expected in the next 60 days, and of course now a spanner in the works, just in case the BBI report is released today. It's actually all eyes as far as Gusii is concerned. Something big ought to be happening, and of course we're keeping our eyes and ears at that particular county. Also joined by Honorable Fred Ouda. He's the MP Kisumu Central. Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana.
Pole, nimechelewa kidogo.
Hoping Mashujaa Day was well.
Yeah, of course. It was good.
Okay, fantastic. As you come, of course, late to the discussion, but bringing you up to speed on this one. As we go to the floor of the House, I'd asked Robert the same question because we've seen how the Senate has dealt with very many issues. And in particular points, we come to the latest one, revenue allocation. 47 of them couldn't decide on the way forward. Are you optimistic that this time round with the handshakes, coalitions made, we have a super majority, so to speak?
Jeff, first of all, I want to say pole sana kwa kuchelewa. I'm late. But it's very unfortunate that today we are posing such a question before we are posing it. And again, even after posing it, we are supposed to answer it. It's a very unfortunate question, Jeff.
Why is that?
Because everything that we are doing currently, myself as Fred Ouda and my colleague here, we are doing it for posterity. We are doing it for this country. And this is what we seek to end. Because, of course, you're using the issue of 47 counties. Definitely. These are some of the things we are talking about historical injustices. And that's why most senators could not vote as per the government or whatever directive. Because everybody was looking at his backyard and his voters. So, Jeff, and that's why I will always say anytime, any day, that this country still needs to fix this constitution. As much as everybody is making noise about it, we need to fix it. Then we'll end such quarrels and squabbles and disagreements in Parliament. Right now, any right-thinking leader, be it me, be it my colleague, be it any person, regardless of your political divide, there comes a times when you put all our political ambitions, political positions, political whatever divide in the whole country, we put them aside. And then we need to put our country first and say, this is what is good for our country. But right now, Jeff, what is happening in Parliament? Somebody even argues and disagrees with what is obvious. Just because you are in Tanga, another person in Kieleke, another person is neutral. And I am so happy with my president. Yesterday he said he is urging our people that you build a political consensus through a document called BBI. Fix the 20% that our deputy and his team cried about in 2010. That's what we are trying to seek. And that's why, Jeff, my colleague here and the entire House leadership is not about marshalling. We are going to talk to our colleagues and tell them, look, guys, this is what was there. This is what is here. There's a slight difference, and for the best that is good for this country. Can you guys come together? Okay. We'll have to, of course, you'll have to build consensus. But, Jeff, again and again, it should be a wrong question at this time and this time and age in our country. We really need to fix this thing so that we never go through what we went through with the 47 senators in the Senate. I mean, it was very, very sad. Okay,
let me pose another question and echo what Jerotich had brought out, and you've seen it also in some of the WhatsApp messages we've just sampled, Robert. And it almost seems like, as an electorate, we're not the problem. We're saying the actual problem is you guys. You know, you're the ones who beat the drums for campaigns. You're the ones who bring it to a fever pitch. You're the ones who bring it to where it is every 5 years. We're busy trying to earn a living, take our children to school. So really, it's not a constitutional issue. or a national issue, it's a politician's issue.
Let me tell you, Jeff, the reality is this. You know, this document that everybody is, you know, some people have chosen, even before the release, to oppose. You know, because we've had rallies where people are saying, oh, this is about creating jobs for a few people. I thank the president for correcting that. But the reality is that people were given an opportunity. This team, the Secretariat, went to every county and talked to people. In fact, in every constituency, there was a meeting held, and people gave their views. What are the things that you feel that can be changed in the 2010 Constitution so that we can improve the lives of our people? And let me tell you, Kenyans did not give their views based on the leaders. They gave their views based on what they think is good for them. And these are the things that have been put together. So the fact remains that, of course, politicians take a lead when it comes to political issues. When it comes to passing a legislation like this, it would be the politicians that take a lead. But we don't do it for ourselves. We do it for the sake of the people. One of the things that is so highly criticized is the one of expanding the leadership of the nation. I've heard people say, oh, I want to create jobs for a few people. But then when you look at it, and let's be honest, Kenya is made up of so many, ethnic groups. And we cannot run away from the fact that Kenyans do still recognize themselves as first belonging to a family, a community, a region, before they become a nation. So those things are still inherent in our people. And that is why you find even political parties will have more votes in certain areas. Not because their ideologies are better, by the way, that's a reality, but because they are led by people from those communities. Mm-hmm. And that is where Kenya is. So what happens is that every time after 5 years, elections are held, and you have a president from one community, a deputy from another community, and they take over the leadership. Even the arrangement of the cabinet starts becoming skewed towards them. Because they are the people who got the votes. Yes. What happens is that you actually immediately alienate half the nation. And that's what we are saying. And the president has a very good idea, and Kenyans have supported it and given their views. Why don't we expand that leadership so that we can feel it is a little bit more accommodative, so that we feel that Kenyans are being representative. And when it comes to cabinet slots, let us see the face of Kenya. And I think that's really what BBI is talking about. That's one of the things. Not creating jobs for 2, 3, 4 people. No. Bringing Kenyans together so that, because if you identify yourself, I identify myself as a Kenyan. I'm also a Kamba. I cannot forget that, and I cannot wish that away. But I want to also feel that myself and my community belong to this government. That's what we want to solve.
Let me bring Jero in on that one and just bounce it off her as well on that. Jero, do you feel that's the way to bring this unity and sense of nationhood? If we had, for example, hypothetically, a Kalenjin prime minister, Jero, would you feel that you're now included in this particular government?
To be perfectly honest, not, because having had a Kalenjin deputy president, what exactly has that done for me? Having had a Kalenjin president for 24 years, what exactly did that do for me? And I think until Kenyans begin to address the fallacy and the weaponization of ethnicity against citizens, so that we are whipped up into spaces of tribal frenzy and tribal sentiment to say, my person is here, my person is not here. And I can totally understand, having read the first iteration of the BBI report released last year, where the drafters and the writers were going in terms of expanding and expounding on issues of negative ethnicity and so on. But what I resist strongly is the idea that I, Jerotich Seii, was born with hectic, hostile tribal sentiments that would mean that I would never participate effectively as a citizen of this country unless my person, male or female, is represented in power. I also want to talk about expansion of the space so that it's not always a winner takes all. We're looking at a government that has failed since 2010, successive parliaments, obviously, to implement the 2/3 gender rule. And one of the big fat debates around it was that it's too expensive to implement. If we find the 2/3 gender rule too expensive to implement, how are we going to afford an expanded legislature, an expanded executive, and so on and so forth? So there's a lot of hypocrisy for me in some elements where they say, look, let us stop all this hostility by being more inclusive. But at this point in time, 52% of the population of Kenya Kenya is not effectively included in leadership, life and times, despite the fact that they form 52%. If we cannot deal with issues of equity and equality along very simple binary lines of sex, male and female, bearing in mind that there are so many other gender identities, how on earth are we going to tackle the complexity of ethnicity, which I believe has just been created and formed to whip us into spaces of obedience, so that we know at the end of the day. In fact, Jeff, if you look at your Twitter handle, where I think one of my, where I have been captioned a bit earlier on, there's already people abusing me in there of being Tanga. I'm sure every time I open my mouth to speak, they see my name, Jerotich, and they say this is obviously somebody who is in the Tanga camp. So I agree that as Kenyans, we have been brainwashed into mindless belief that so long as somebody can see the name, this person is Luo, they have to be in the handshake, they have to be part of Baba's brigade, they're in ODM, they're supporting it. If somebody's Amkamba, they have to be somewhere. If somebody's Kikuyu, they have to be somewhere. And these are the debates that we are not having enough of. Instead, we are accepting as the broad public that we are the ones to blame for why it is where we are today, and something has to happen. So we're going to expand the 3 arms of government. We're going to make it completely unaffordable. And at the end of the day, as I said, and I keep saying, and people can berate me, ridicule me, say whatever they want to say about me, tell me how any of these things is going to help somebody pay school fees, pay hospital bills, build their little business if they cannot afford their stima, and so on and so forth. So I always have people saying, oh, be reasonable. Why are you in this camp? Why can't you see that this is such a wonderful document? Proof is in the pudding. We have been presented document upon document. We have been presented the Big Four agenda. Vision 2030, where are we today? Those who are the proponents will argue how and why it didn't work out. In the same way, those who are the proponents of BBI, and myself being very close to BBI, even having a father who is a member of the task force that did go around collecting views, I still represent my constitutional and democratic right as a citizen of this republic, who is first of all a Kenyan, first of all a patriot, before you discuss my ethnic identity, to say, actually, this is not the way we're going to bring about transformation for the people of Kenya. And that is why when in this, I think my tweet was in early December last year, when I said, if you break down this document, it's about succession and succession politics. It is not about Wanjiko. It's not about Chepkoech. It's not about Adhiambo. It's not about Mora. It's not about Fatma. It's about succession politics at the very top. And I will maintain that, and history will prove those of us who are being berated and sitting on the sidelines, right or wrong, we shall wait to see. But this idea of saying it's a binary debate, it's either Tanga or Kieleweke, handshake, ODM spaces, completely wrong, because I am Camp Wa Kenya, always have been, always will be.
Let me bring Oda in on this as well, because as we look at it right now, we've spoken about this inclusivity question and how, as Robert has put it, probably if we had someone representing our community, have a cabinet, the national face, then the sense of nationhood would rise. But there's a counter argument to that if really I had resources at my level, if the debate was how to strengthen devolution, which is a chapter in BBI, and less about positions, we saw it again with the Senate revenue allocation, where we were speaking about a paltry sum of money, and the executive had these trillions of shillings. If that was a conversation, and if I'm in Turkana or Migori or Nyandarua, I have a lot of resources there, then it doesn't really matter who's at cabinet, because they're at my doorstep. Yeah. Why isn't that the key debate, and expansion expansion of the executive taking front agenda?
Jeff, let me tell you, any game without rules is not not a game. And that's why I want to begin by actually correcting our good lady.
Which rule doesn't have the game, the rules? Which game doesn't have the rules?
Let me tell you, you cannot run politics in this country and structures of governance if you don't have a proper document that directs it. Honestly, Jeff, we have suffered in this country. We have cried so much about the way my colleague has said,
but
about distribution of resources and everything. We had a constitution before. Mm-hmm. Under the Moi regime, under Kibaki regime. We worked so hard as a country and brought in a document that at least now we can have resources down in the villages in the name of devolved governments or other county governments. This came as a result of 2010 constitution. We said in 2010, yes, we all agreed as a country that yes, we have a document, we have somewhere we can something we can step on. Now, the remaining 20%, you can do it later a few years to come. Now we are here. It is so sad when somebody thinks that this document is about succession politics. That is where, and even as much as my good lady will be talking about this thing, definitely anybody sitting here will know what she's talking about.
You don't see why she thinks that?
No, I don't see why she thinks that, because let me ask you, if today you leave Raila Odinga just to run the government the way it is, if today you leave William Ruto to run the government the way it is, let me ask you, do you think there are solutions? No. And that's why I agree with the President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. There must be a document that will direct us. It is
but
very sad.
There already is a constitution that hasn't been
and that is what we are talking about.
That's a problem.
We are saying this document had a few errors, and we are correcting it. She's saying it. She said that yes, we need to fix this thing so that everybody feels part and parcel of this government. It is so sad that these people are taking only 2% of that document, of, I don't know, creating 2-3 positions and running away with it, and ignoring the other basic fundamental things that has been brought by this document. A good example, distributing more resources back to the counties. It is so sad that Tanga team has just picked, I mean, what will a Prime Minister do to me if there are no structures? What will a President do to me if there are no structures? What will a Deputy Prime Minister do to me if that document does not talk about everything that goes, including historical injustice? It is so sad. And honestly, Jeff, the day Tanga team will stop this spiritual thinking that this thing is about, tomorrow Raila Odinga will be gone. Tomorrow William Ruto will be gone. Tomorrow Uda will be gone. What will be left for our children? That is the question.
Before I get to Robert,
so as a country, Jeff, let me just finish.
Very quickly,
as a country, as an assembly, as politicians, we need to stop thinking about 2022 and think about this document. What if today Raila Odinga is no more? What if today Uhuru is no more? What if today Ruto is no more? And that is why I agree with Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Uhuru is actually ending his term. Raila Odinga now is an elder. He has seen so much in politics. He said, look guys, instead of competing every 5 years, why can't you do this thing back from grassroots so that this tribal inclination ends? Because it doesn't start at the presidency. It starts even at the election of a chief. People argue about this chief does not come from a clan. This MCA does not come from. That is what BBI
Okay, I'm getting to Robert in just a bit. Let me have Jero bounce back on this. What's your take on that? Quick rejoinder, Jero, as I get to Robert.
It is about succession politics. That's all. That's my quick rejoinder. We shall see it as we see the battles played out in Parliament to pass this within 60 days. And I also observed that my brother on that side was already binary debating that Tanga needs to use its common sense. These are the exact same things I'm saying, Jeff, that as soon as we start politicizing the document, it stops being about me, it stops being about you. It's about the factions at that odd political level, and they will continue to debate it and fight it. So it'll be Tanga saying no, and Kieleweke handshake, ODM space saying yes. Where does that leave the rest of us? And I know it's an unpopular opinion, and I know I'm repeatedly berated, but ultimately when Kenyans take a step back and think about it, this document is not about them. It features them, it berates them, it attacks them, it criticizes them, it even promises them certain things, but it is ultimately not about them. And until I see how we try to respect and implement the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and how it failed, these corrections and tweaks that come in the form of amendments that ultimately look like a repeal process should be called what it is. And if we want to repeal the Constitution, then let's announce a repeal and let's go back to the drawing board as we did for 20 years leading up to the Constitution of Kenya 2010. But ultimately, it's not about me, and it's not about the ordinary Kenyan on the street, full stop. But I respect everybody's opinion to believe what they want to believe about it. It's fine. I will never clash, fight, be hostile towards even my brothers there in the studio, because they have a right. They have a right to believe whatever they want to believe about what the BBI is doing for them, and that's well and good.
Okay, Jero, let me cut you short and bring Robert in on this one. And Robert, what I want to ask, even as we move this forward on this one, is because we're talking about this BBI document as the solution to very many problems we have. But you also have a constitution that hasn't been fully implemented, first of all. The CIOC chair, Jeremiah Kioni, also agrees to that. Yes. We also have very many laws that are being flouted by both politicians and executive that chooses when to follow the law and when not to. Isn't that the issue that even BBI won't be able to solve? Impunity from this particular political class.
Yeah, thank you. Let me first begin by saying that we need to look at the facts. You know, many times we hear people speak or even on TV and out there in funerals and in functions. And the reality is this, that BBI is a huge document with a lot of proposals,
Yes.
which will be taken to Kenyans for them to accept or reject. But the reality is this, it is not about, and you know, when people keep saying it's going to make it very expensive to run government, let's talk about a prime minister and 2 deputies, because we already have a president and a deputy. If you are talking about those 3 individuals, what really would be the cost to the average Kenyan?
Yes.
If you take that salary and then divide it amongst Kenyans, I mean, the thing will not even be 5 cents even per year. So the reality is that like he says that we've picked 1% and we keep concentrating on the 1%. The reality is that it's not that. If you look at the proposal to increase money going to the counties, isn't that going to put money in the pockets of Kenyans?
Yes.
And how much money is going to the counties vis-a-vis the amount of money that will be paid to a prime minister and the 2 deputies? I think we need to be honest in the conversation. The truth is that it's about Kenyans. It's not about leaders. Now, you've said that there are things that we've not been able to implement. And my sister here has talked about the one-third gender rule. You know, the Constitution as currently framed, if you look at Article 27, it talks about that issue of the one-third gender rule, because the only one, Article 27, Part 8, it talks about that. And what they say is this, that of course we must make sure that in all elective and selective positions, 1/3 must be from either gender. But the first part of Article 27 says there should be no discrimination at all. Gender discrimination in political, in social, and in all spheres of life. Now, the minute you say there will be no discrimination, you've already said that all genders are equal. Then the last part of it says one gender we must ensure that the genders are balanced. How do you do that? Now, let me tell you, Senate has a top-up formula in the Constitution. The assemblies have a top-up formula in the Constitution. The same Constitution has limited the number of members of parliament to 290. It has limited the number of nominees to 12. And then, you know, that is the constitution of the parliament, of the National Assembly. Then now you're saying, members go and make a law to ensure that you have 1/3 gender rule respected. How do you do that? Do you kick out some members from the House? Because that would mean that some of the members who are male have to give up their offices so that women are brought in.
Yes.
The other issue is, of course, even if that's not the case, do you top up? You cannot top up because the same constitution has a number of members. It is limited. That number is limited. So me, I'm saying that there is a difficulty in some of the things in the current constitution that I think a constitutional moment is used for us to analyze this. Another question would be this. What is it that the men in the National Assembly and Senate and the women in the National Assembly are unable to do that requires other women to come into the House to achieve? You know, at the end of the day, I think we need to, I support the idea of women in leadership. My previous member of parliament for Kadhiani was Wavinya Ndeti. She vied for that seat against 7 male members of parliament. Well, sorry, not members of parliament, but 17, actually not 17 men, and she won. I think at the end of the day, we need to have further conversations. But what I'm saying is that, yes, it is true there's some parts of the Constitution that have not been implemented. Maybe there are court cases. Maybe it is difficult to implement. And you know what? That 1/3 gender rule came to, the bill has been to the House, I think 3 times. I have voted each of the 3 times, if you check the records unanswered. I have voted in support 3 times. Unfortunately, if the number of members in that House on that day is not 2/3 by itself, which is very difficult to achieve. There's somebody in hospital, there's somebody burying a relative, there's somebody dealing with a function somewhere.
But it's achieved other times, Robert.
It's not achieved. It's not. I'm telling you, it's not achieved.
When other laws need to be passed.
It's very difficult. It has always been difficult to raise 2/3. I'll tell you a simple one. Even when we were trying to, at that time, members of parliament came together and said, we are going to oppose the idea of introducing VAT on fuel. If you remember that agenda, members were up in arms against it, and we went to the House. But we couldn't raise 2/3. It's very, very difficult. We've achieved it maybe once or twice since I was in Parliament from 2013. Check the number of times 2/3 of members were able to be there and rally support for something. So it's also a very difficult task. And maybe the Constitution should have given us a mandate to be able to change that with a simple majority. It would have been done a long time ago. So the same Constitution has put hurdles and bottlenecks and blocks us from being able to achieve things that are also named in the same constitution. So I think we need to change a few things.
Okay, Robert, we have a minute to go, and I want to be very generous. Can we please be very cautious with our time? I want parting shots from each of you very quickly, in a minute to go. So 10, 15 seconds each. I would answer with you very quickly.
Definitely, Jeff, we're in a constitutional moment. Let's know that it is not Raila Odinga or William Ruto or Fred Ouda or my colleague who will fix this country. Okay. We need a document that will fix this country once and for all. And if we have to leave this country behind, then one time when we're in heaven or wherever we will be, we'll look down and say, yes, we had a country. But let us stop arguing about 1% of this constitution. Let us look at this thing wholesomely, come together as a nation, and correct the 20% that William Ruto talked about. We agree with him. In 2010, we needed to fix that 20%. This is the time. Okay. Let us fix it, including the gender, the two-third gender rules.
Okay, we leave it at that. Jero, what's your parting shot this morning?
Implement the Constitution of Kenya 2010, full stop.
Okay, very brief, concise, and to the point. Robert, what's your parting shot as well?
Well, I think mine would be to say that it's high time we stop the polarization of the nation. Yes. I think there is a narrative out there of hustlers versus dynasties. I've told you why I'm bitter about it. And I can also say that this narrative is not even about the president and the leadership, because the first president, Uhuru Kenyatta, in slang language was a hustler. The second president, Moi, in slang language was also a hustler. The third president, Mwai Kibaki, was also a hustler. The only president who was born from a dynasty family is actually the current president. So let the fight between the deputy and his president be used against the rest of us as Kenyans. Okay, that's why we leave it as far as it's concerned. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Kathiani MP, Honorable Robert Mbowe, thank you so much for your time being on the show. Honorable Fred Ouda, Kisumu Central MP, asante sana for your time. We also had Jerotich Seii via Skype chiming in on the conversation. Asante sana for your time as well, Jero. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And of course, as always, for your invaluable input, even as the discussion continues. We had a question of the day that we had posed to you. Let's have some of that feedback as well, even as we bring this to a close. Let's have that up. Can Parliament's leadership bring the House to consensus to support the government agenda? Once again, can Parliament's leadership bring the House to consensus to support the government agenda? Let's see what you had to say. Okay, let's have that up. The Parliament is responsible for uniting this nation, and so being under one leadership, they should not mislead the common mananchi. The President isn't an angel to fulfill his agenda without the Parliament's support. Let the politicians tame their political yearnings and support our nation to move forward. That's Dennis from Homa Bay, Kibiri. Hello, Jeff. It's very unfortunate that the Big Four agenda has currently been abandoned, and I think BBI is the reason. Okay, that's what we have right now, but of course the conversation continues online. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. We draw the curtains on the newspaper review. Take a short break. We are back on the other side as we get interactive, so you can stick around for that. And if you haven't gotten yourself a copy of your People Daily, you can get it straight to your phone. The number that you dial, *550 *4#, dial it and get yourself an e-paper straight to your phone by the PD and Safaricom. Take a short break. Back in a bit.